Welcome back to Hey Eintracht Frankfurt, the Bundesliga podcast covering everything there is to know in the English language about Eintracht Frankfurt. I am Chris Monroe here in the middle of the Great Lakes State here in Lansing, Michigan. Just a couple housekeeping notes before we get into the business of the day. We've partnered up with a couple local venues, a restaurant in Louisville and a restaurant in Philadelphia. We'll name them later, but we're going to have some exciting things happening for the Eintracht Frankfurt summer tour. Please stay close by. I know the season's ending. Follow us on social media and keep track of where we're going to be this summer. And if you're following Eintracht Frankfurt through the United States, you will be able to find us. A lot of us are going to be there, one city or the other or both. We love hearing from the listeners. We love engagement, and we want more people to join. Get on the pod yourself. So we invite you to follow us on Twitter, or X as apparently we're supposed to call it now, Blue Sky, Instagram, and what did I miss?
Facebook.
Yeah, that's about all of them. Facebook, I don't know if we're still on there, but yeah, we're going to update them all, and we're going to update everyone on where that's at. If you go to any of our social medias, you can find our link tree that has all the social media feeds there, and we'll send that out. But without further ado, I am a bit rusty on the lead side of things. I've been tagging along for the last couple months, but back in the driver's seat today, and we're blessed to have royalty here for a bit of today's show. The OG, the man, the myth, the legend. I don't know what other titles I'm supposed to give you. You're not really the Pope. You're just kind of the Pope of this show. There was white smoke in the sky today, and Brian said, "I'm coming on the podcast." How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's wonderful evening here in Kansas City. More than happy to talk the Eintracht with you guys. And it does always seem like any time you ever see a glimmer of hope, something gets dashed against a rock.
Um, you know, it's true, and we're gonna get into that, and it's gonna hurt, like getting thrown against a rock. Speaking about somebody that knows about getting thrown against a rock, a man who follows some of the hardest sports teams to follow as a fan of any teams around the world, the Florida Marlins, the Jacksonville Jaguars, like a man who loves pain. John over in Virginia. How you doing, man?
Doing
That was a
pretty
great
good.
segue.
Doing pretty good, and even though my local hockey team is experiencing some pain right now, I am a full Carolina Hurricanes enjoyer as like a second team. So this is fun for me, and maybe get a little ticket to Game 5. See them close it out. Then who knows?
That's fun. It's always fun to cheer against the backyard team. If that's ever an opportunity someone has, I did it when I was living in other places, and it's a fun position to be in.
Yeah.
Brian, we're not even going to talk about your sports teams because, whatever. You got one that's good. But anyway, let's get into it, guys. Another matter of housekeeping. We're going to mention the Frauen here because their season did end. But we're going to focus mostly on the men here. We're going to have a women's season recap episode coming up shortly. But yesterday, as we're recording here on Monday the 12th, Sunday the 11th, Eintracht Frankfurt Frauen 2, RB Leipzig 0. Nothing to play for as far as, the odds of there wasn't anywhere to go but up in the table, and we just had to take care of business. Wolfsburg took care of business on their end, so it didn't mean much. But I thought it was a business-like performance. See some players that are leaving at the end of the season go out and give it one last run. Anything from either of you guys before we shut down the Frauen season and wait for our season recap?
Yeah, I mean it was a good game. We went out there. We were the only ones who had a possibility of something to play for. Dominated that Leipzig side. I thought Nadine Reason, who came in place of Nina Larson that game, I think just for like rotation sense, seeing what we can get out of her, had a really good game, and that was very nice to see. But otherwise, victory, finish in third place because Wolfsburg went up 3-0 on Leverkusen very early, and Leverkusen, even though they had chances, couldn't find their way back from 3-0 down against a very good Wolfsburg side, and so we end up in third place to end the year and back into qualifiers for the Champions League. It's a result that I think at the beginning of the season would have felt okay, not amazing, just because we had high expectations, but obviously given the course of the season, it's a bit disappointing to fall all the way down into third place.
Yeah, for sure. To be at first in the table at the change of the calendar year, and I'm convinced that all the pauses in the women's calendar just causes chaos, because as soon as you get momentum going, there's another break, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. But all the teams have to deal with it equally too, so we can't use that as an excuse. I like the way they ended the season strong, winning the last 3 in a row. But still, falling short of where we thought midwinter where this group should be. So some things to look forward to. They are qualified for Champions League. That was an expectation. We didn't drop down in the table, which would have been a major setback. But yeah, I hope it leaves the group hungry, wanting more. And we're going to recap the season in more detail in a further episode. But certainly ending the season going to Champions League is something we expected from the women. And frankly, we're still waiting for the men to do it. So that's where our focus is going to be today. Again, our Frauen season recap will come up shortly. But John, we got to get into it right now. The news of the weekend, Eintracht Frankfurt failing to get the victory that would have secured Champions League qualification, not getting help from other points in the table that would have helped us get in. Instead, things just got more complicated. Dortmund beats Leverkusen 4-2, and now we're just kind of hanging on, hoping for dear life. Let's get into this match. Really, really nitty gritty here. 2-2 final, but it starts off with a Rasmus Christensen goal. What was it, like the 26 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, it was right around that mark. It was so early. I mean, I had just thrown the game on a few minutes earlier, walked out of my room to grab some water, come back in, and there he goes and scores. I was like, holy shit, are we really going to do this now? And that feeling didn't last very long, did it?
Yeah, we got to talk about the lead up to it, because I think the table was pretty important. You had St. Pauli is fighting for their life. They still are, even after that result, with the 1
slightly.
point they received. But St. Pauli, yeah, they're safe from the automatic relegation.
They're practically safe.
No. Yeah, there's not going to be a plus 13 from Heidenheim.
Yeah.
But that safety for them is every bit as critical, more critical than qualification for Champions League. And so you knew they were going to come out with their best effort. And I really felt like that first minute goal said, not today, not in our house. We score a goal in the first minute. And we talk about the slow starts that this group has had quite frequently, where it takes 20, 25 minutes to wake up. To get one in the first minute felt perfect, felt destined to be a 3-point victory. And things kind of eroded. It didn't erode quickly. I thought we still played a decent match through the first half, but they almost just kind of, I don't know. I mean, the response by St. Pauli 3 minutes later, look, St. Pauli scored 2 goals in the first 20 minutes on 2 shots on target, and they never had a single one the rest of the match. So it's not as if Frankfurt let their guard down. But my dumbass decides that on our Discord chat, I'm going to drop little nuggets in there, like, I hope you don't get beat on the counter. Why? Why do I talk? Like, what is the point of...
Not to mention you bringing out the Apfelwein can that you have waiting Should have left that in the fridge for the whole match. That's
So, for those that don't know, wonderful Eintracht ambassador by the name of Tom, who runs EFC New York. Tom gifted me a nice little can of Possmann Apfelwein, and I've been holding it for a special occasion. It was supposed to be a European final, didn't work out that way. So I said Champions League qualification. We qualify, I'm gonna pop that can. It's still here. It's it's still here. I've been waiting to pop this can now for about 3 weeks, and it's one of those things where I didn't necessarily expect the victory. I think a lot of people actually predicted the draw in our predictor league, just knowing how we do in these scenarios. But to come out and score a goal that quickly and then immediately get countered twice to go down in the first 20 minutes, for me, that's entirely unacceptable for what is now a pretty seasoned group of players out there.
yeah, it is. I don't really know what else to say. It's you got to go out there and fucking win. I mean, it's a team you should beat. And honestly, all credit to St. Pauli. Their coach said after the game, "Oh, I think we probably went into parking the bus too early, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that against this Frankfurt side? We're not a side that plays well in possession. We don't break defenses down well at all. And I don't think that's just us. I think that's a trend across German football and has been for some time. But, you saw we had no creativity when they're blocking everything. Our game is to play quickly, play on the counter, beat the other side with speed, beat them with a few different dribbles, boom, get the open man and score. And that was not really possible against St. Pauli in this match. And they had a good game plan, unfortunately for us. I mean, that's how they've played all year, and it's something we should have expected going in. And ultimately it cost us. I mean, we barely had any shots on goal. What did we end up with? Five shots on target.
I was going to go into the stats here. And when we talk about just how little we did with the opportunity afforded us, 73% possession. We had triple the number of shots, almost triple number of passes as St. Pauli. 73% possession, 89% pass accuracy, 5 shots on target, 13 shots total. St. Pauli did a great job of getting bodies in front of balls and deflecting them and giving poor angles for quite a few of them that were just wishes from outside the box that sailed high or wide. But to possess the ball, 73%, and I would say probably 65 or more percent of that was in the final third of the pitch. We really just move the ball around the perimeter, and we lack the players with the creativity. That's the match where Mario Götze would have made the difference. His ability to work the ball in tight spaces and make creative passes in those areas, that is something that the older you get, that skill does not diminish like some of the others. And his fitness would not have been tested because that whole match was played in the final third. And just to be in that position and be afforded that park the bus situation for 75 minutes, I wasn't too worried because I thought, hey, we're going to get it. Now, when we got that tying goal, the Batman got it in the 71st minute, the tying goal. And then there was the other one that had the handball in the box. It was, that's an obvious call. You can't even argue against it.
That was very...
John, I'm going to be honest. This is why we don't deserve Champions League, because I've harped about it and I've been very critical about it. But the fact remains, we have dropped. I wish Garrett was here because we've dropped so many points against the bottom 5-6 teams in the table. That bottom third has feasted on us, and at home too, not just on the road. We've been eaten alive at home in the matches that we're supposed to secure 3 points easily. And you look who's right on our tail in league play, with Dortmund's victory 4-2 over Leverkusen on the weekend. guys are right on our ass. And
Yeah.
what you saw was Dortmund taking care of business against a team above them in the table. Again, Leverkusen didn't have anything to play for. Dortmund certainly did, and they made the most of it. But Dortmund has been taking the points they're supposed to get, and they're
Hmm.
not leaving them on the table. I mean, they've won four in a row.
Yeah.
That's how you close the season when you want to qualify,
Yeah,
unlike
and,
us.
and that's a Dortmund side who for most of the season could not perform on the road at all, especially. And they go on the road at Leverkusen. Xabi Alonso's last game in charge there, well, at home there. And yeah, Leverkusen didn't have anything to play for. They're locked into second place, but Dortmund completely controlled them. Yeah, Leverkusen had some shots, but Dortmund had the better chances and they came away with a victory as they deserved in that. And that puts us in a whole lot of pressure now that we'll get into later. But yeah,
Yeah.
like this is a game that you're supposed to win. You just got to do it. You-
Yep. And it's not the match of distractions that we've had in the past when we're in Europa
yeah,
League finals and setting everything aside to focus on that. If Brian had technical difficulties, had to back out for a few minutes, but he always said all the games count equally, the same number of points.
hmm
This is why this is why I thought it was critical that we banked those points early in the year.
yep,
Not only did we make moves and lose talent at the midpoint of the season, but that entirely changed our outlook coming into the second half of the season. And this team just hasn't been the same since
yeah,
January. And the number of bodies that we're relying on to have an immediate impact, the reality is in Frankfurt, those winter signings generally take, the first portion of the year to get comfortable, and then, come August, September, I expect them to roll at full
yeah.
speed. But I'm glad we banked those points early on because right now it just feels like we're praying to get to match day 34 and now it's here and I'm kind of concerned.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point when it comes to the winter signings. Michi Batshuayi's come in. He's done pretty much exactly what we expected out of him, which, I mean, honestly wasn't a lot. But he's come in, he's played substitute minutes, done a fine enough job, and scored a few goals. But then you look at Eli Wahi, he hasn't even seen the pitch in weeks. And, you'd think, all right, we spent the second most on a player ever in him this winter on him, and he can't even find the pitch. Yeah, players take time to integrate into the side. Hugo Ekitike took time to, become the player that he has been for us, but he was still playing in the second half of
Yeah.
last year after we brought him in winter, and by the end of the year, he was scoring goals at a good rate. And with Wahi that hasn't happened, and that's obviously not something you want when you go and sell your best player in winter and the replacement for him just isn't able to make up really anything.
And yet it's one of those replacements that kept us from dropping all 3 points this weekend too. So it's not as if there hasn't been any contribution, but it hasn't been enough to sustain even remotely that early
Right.
success.
Yeah.
And with 1 week left, you look at who's going to be the guy. Who's the one that said enough is enough? Let's bury this diva. Eh, I can't point to one. I'd like to say Hugo Ekitike,
hmm
but his production has really fallen off, and we've relied on him a bit too much. He really can't be the focus guy. He's a create for himself kind of person in the right circumstance when the defense is looking at, a Marmouche on the other side and they're saying we need three bodies there. That's why Ekitike had so much room to work with early in the year. And now defenses can single him out and say, hey, if we shut down Ekitike, we shut down that whole offense. At least that's how it appeared to me the last 6 to 8
Yeah.
weeks.
No, it absolutely has been that way. But at the same time, part of what what made Marmouche work well was because you had the threat of Ekitike as well. You had two very good strikers alongside each other that you have to pay attention to both. And now that Ekitike doesn't have someone alongside him like that, or at least someone consistent, because we've seen games where Ansgar Knauf has looked really good, and in those games it's really helped Ekatike. But when Knauf is off and he doesn't have a second threat, it's very hard for him to create. So yeah, I mean, again, I'd love him to be the guy this coming week. I think it'd be a great send off. He's probably going to leave in the summer.
Yeah, that's tough too.
Yeah, and it's like this.
I mean,
This dude is
the guy
really
the
good.
guy would be brilliant for us in
Well, if
Champions
you
League.
bother to, it's only going to happen if you bother to accept this transfer diatribe that everyone seems to be obsessed about on social media. It drives me up a wall. Already know which guy is the main culprit, and of course there's a German one as well. I can't stand them, even though
No, that
sometimes they will know the first rumblings well before they actually transpire.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Obviously, that one guy when it comes to transfers is, well, I mean, he's just a grifter anyway. But ultimately, when you have
You're talking about the Italian or the German?
the Italian, but the German's not ideal either. But when it comes to Ekatike, like when you perform as well as he had for a club like Eintracht, you're gonna get a lot of interest from clubs that are like better, quote unquote, or top, big clubs, and they're able to pay more in salary. So if he gets an offer from one of them, why would he not take it? And the club will get a good payday out of it. And I think that's the biggest reason why I think he probably will leave, is that the club sees this as, we paid less than we were initially going to pay for him, and we can get a really good return on it and use that money to, get the next young striker, or bring in a young striker and another more experienced one, a certain guy from Mainz possibly. But yeah, and so unfortunately he's probably going to leave, but that kind of digresses
that's
from the point
something
of right now.
Yeah, but it's an overshadowing concern for everything that's going on right now, because if we do qualify for Champions League, we want to be competitive in it.
Yeah.
And we've all got memories of the last time we went to Champions League, selling our top scorer or our biggest threat at that point. And, we made the most out of what we had and fought decently through the group stage at least. But it's just one of those things where I want a little consistency. And I know it's Frankfurt. We have this discussion every year. We're never going to have a stable roster for a 3 to 4 year block of time. But we finally got ourselves in the position. The league is in a position of transition where there is space to move into that top four as a regular. Leipzig doesn't look like their normal selves. I think their run of
That's
being
because
top,
they can't get the right coach. They
didn't appreciate what they had.
Since no, Bayern just paid what, 20 million, and they're like, yeah, they thought they could just add the next guy, and they found out, whoops, we haven't. And they have slipped up time and time and time again, Chris. And I think this really is the place where Eintracht can do what Leipzig cannot.
Well, we're in the rest of the Bundesliga. What about Leverkusen? Is Leverkusen going to fall off?
Yeah, they're
no.
They'll fall off a little bit.
So.
I don't think they'll fall out of like Champions League contention, but they're losing Ta. I don't think that's as big of a loss as a lot of people might think, but obviously because Xavi's leaving, I think Wirtz is going to go. I think Frimpong's going to go. I think Grimaldo's going to go, and probably even Hincapie. So there's opportunity there with other teams. I mean, when you talk about Leipzig, Xavi Simons, they signed permanently, but he wants to play Champions League.
He will go.
He will leave because the highest European competition they can possibly play, if they even get into one, is the Conference League. So I think they'll lose Xavi Simons, and we've seen Leipzig without Xavi, and it's been really bad.
Yeah. Brian, you contended Leverkusen's still going to be up there. You want to contest John's point?
Yes. So here's the thing. I think Leverkusen has finally figured out what they were struggling with for all those years. Like, they had a genuine team that you thought, hey, this team won't be in the Champions League. Like, bounce between 2 and 6th place. Just, always will be like, hey, we won't be in the Champions League every single of the next 4 years, but we'll be in 2 of the 4, if not 3 of the 4. And I think that they had a glimpse of what they can accomplish if they put everything together right. And I do think that we're going to have Leverkusen be that team that was in the late 90s and early 2000s version of Leverkusen, where they really were competing for the title. I think Dortmund honestly has been saved by Kovac. It's kind of crazy
Yeah.
that happened, but it's genuinely happened. Otherwise, you were thinking they were going to fall off a cliff.
I mean,
If
is it that
they
crazy?
didn't even qualify for Europe. Well, no, the thing is, remember, they got, unlike Leipzig, Dortmund is qualified for this Champions League, not Champions League, this FIFA Club World Cup. It's supposed to net them millions upon millions. Bayern is planning on that as well to help bridge the gap monetarily for all the big spenders that are out there. Dortmund, they'll stay in the races, but Eintracht's in the position where they know that Leipzig won't be able to cut the mustard. Who, after Leipzig, is going to be able to compete for the Champions League? And this is the time that Eintracht has to jump and take that mantle, because what we have is what is at Stuttgart, what is at Bremen to a lesser degree, what is at Cologne. I mean, you have massive fan bases that will then drive a team forward. Schalke's another one.
But I'm going to argue that for a minute, because fan bases don't win games. If that was the case, Frankfurt would be the 20-time defending champs, because there's no better fans out there.
But the thing was, like, for decades, we always had the fans that were always backing us, back when money perhaps didn't matter anywhere near as much. Now it does. And if you correctly monetize things, you can make things happen, but you have to make smart business decisions, not just from a football standpoint, but smart business decisions. Look at
to
the
that
way
point,
that Bayern changed.
That's where Dortmund is
stadium.
taking that next step. Dortmund, for as much as they're one of the big two in this league, they've done a good job of developing talent too. Mm-hmm. And they buy players or develop them young. Like we were talking today about this new signing from Frankfurt, this 15-year-old wonder kid. But then, we don't make anything of those young guys. Dortmund has a history of actually making something of those guys. And when they sell off the Erling Haalands or others, Erling Haaland, like world-class player, getting that world-class money for them, and then they just invest it in the support roles, and they've got, a plethora of riches
and you get
both talent and cash.
established reputation.
The
reputation helps.
I would argue, though, that Dortmund hasn't done a good enough job of doing that, though. They've been able to find, obviously, incredible players, bringing in Haaland, Bellingham, etc.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they sell them off for amazing money, and they bring in good support players. But with Dortmund, their kind of expectation is compete in the Champions League and compete for the Bundesliga title, and they haven't won the Bundesliga since, 2012. And, yeah, they've been pretty close a few years, obviously losing on the last match day a few years ago. But they just haven't really been able to get over the hump. I don't know.
There's like 50. There are 59 teams in the top three flights that would die to be in that position right now, where they're fighting for the Bundesliga title.
I don't disagree.
I
don't disagree. I don't know.
Maybe... The question of Dortmund that I have, like, we've seen what Kovac can do to save the promise of a season for a side, whether it's surviving relegation battle or getting to Champions League, like it looks like Dortmund will do. My biggest question is what comes next. That was always his issue in Bayern too. He would get them somewhere, but then what came next? The follow-up for him wasn't so strong, and he doesn't have the patience for a long game. So I don't think Kovac is at Dortmund for long. But
and remember who he was.
There's so many questions around the rest of the league where I feel like it's the right time for us. And I wasn't going to ask this question, but let me ask. Is Dino Topmuller the guy to get our group consistently into Champions League discussion?
No. That's my short answer. I think he's a decent coach. But we saw last year, I think a lot of the criticism about last year, and he had a squad with new players, and it was his first time coaching, a first team in a top 5 league, even though he had been an assistant for Bayern and Leipzig before, and he had been a head coach in Luxembourg, I believe, and even made the Europa League group stage at one point with them. But to me, he just seems like a decent Bundesliga coach, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a terrible thing for us to have a decent Bundesliga coach. I don't really see a lot with him that screams, all right, this guy's going to go win championships. And again, that's not the position we're in, but I don't know.
Brian?
Maybe. I know that's not the answer. Someone wants me to be the foil and say yes, so I'll try and give my best yes variation. I think what he's learned in his second year is how to make adjustments, and he's shown that he can develop. Honestly, the maybe only comes because, hey, you're doing that pretty decent Europa League campaign that you then, honestly, 1 or 2 breaks and we're in the semifinals and then final. I genuinely believe it was splitting hairs.
Yeah.
But, and then you're talking about a guy who's led a team to a top 4 finish and a top 5 league and the Europa League final. That's a different way of looking at him. And, we've seen with so many, if you look outside of our Frankfurt bubble, you see all these other clubs from all these other countries, how they balance the Champions League when you're not a Real Madrid, you're not a Liverpool, how they balance the Champions League and their league form. It's an entirely different ask once you get to the biggest stage, because you cannot take a night off or you'll just look like a goof. I mean,
and that's where I think the responsibility lies on Marcus Kroesche to give him the tools to succeed in multiple competitions. We are never going to have the depth to roll deep in multiple competitions. We always fall out of one early. We'll compete later in one, and then one we're kind of in the middle. It changes every year how that plays out and which one we're competitive in. But as you know, we usually take a break here. We're rolling straight through. I just want to see consistency, and it's driving me wild the amount of points dropped in the table, and I don't know who to blame. I would love to blame players, but we saw some decent play. So then I say, well, we don't have the right players. Well, that's the job of Marcus Kroesche. Kroesche's made some incredible moves with the personnel. So then is it Dino and getting the personnel to play up to their level? It's just we're not good enough in the 3 aspects of team development to win when we need to win yet. And it's the most frustrating thing for a fan. We took the step from fighting relegation battles every year to fighting mid-table battles every year, and ironically winning a Europa League title as a mid-table team. And now we're fighting for that top 4 position, which I said it all season on this podcast. I care way more about Champions League qualification through the league, because that 34 weeks of battle-tested hell proves to me that we've taken a next step that is always fallen short for us. We might as well start talking Freiburg now, because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to discuss here. Freiburg, they're in a situation where they have the exact same thing to fight for that we do. And in their case, a tie isn't going to be good enough, because if Dortmund wins on match day 34 and Freiburg gets a tie, they're fucked. They're out. So Freiburg is on home turf against Eintracht Frankfurt, and Champions League is on the line for one side. If Freiburg beats Frankfurt, so let's go into the details of it. Frankfurt on and third in the table, 57 points. Freiburg is fourth with 55. Freiburg sitting at 4 with a -2 goal differential is still kind of blowing my mind that they could qualify for Champions League and still be in the negative. But it is what it is. But more concerning is Dortmund. So they're sitting at 54 points, 1 point behind Freiburg. They're sitting on a +17 goal differential. So the point being, Dortmund plays Holstein Kiel. That game is at home. Yellow Wall, Signal Iduna Park, that whole thing is in play. They could quite easily make up that -3. They're 3 back from us in the goal differential pretty easy. Guys, am I wrong? We have to beat Freiburg. There's no scenario where we tie and advance, in my opinion.
No. If we tie, we advance because we're ahead on
I'm
points.
Sorry. Yes. We tie, we advance. I'm sorry. We tie, we advance. But in my opinion, we have to win because Freiburg's not out for the tie. The tie doesn't help Freiburg. Freiburg needs the win. So if there's a scenario where it's 1-1, Freiburg's pushing. We might sit back because the tie is safe for us. But how often has this team, particularly this season, sat back and allowed a goal?
Yeah. No, I do. It's such a weird situation, right? Because you've got teams in 3rd and 4th place occupying the 2 last Champions League spots. And almost certainly one of them will not be in the Champions League next year. I don't see a scenario where Kiel defeats Dortmund or draws Dortmund. If they did, that'd be amazing. But again, all the games are at the same time, so we won't know. Players on the bench, the coaching staff will know what's going on. But
plus, Kiel is already down.
Yeah, Kiel has nothing to play for. And so you just have to go out there and try and win because, a draw gets us through. And I hate that almost to a certain extent because knowing that you have a safety net sometimes allows you to just not try as hard. And
it never works out.
And it can backfire. It happens in football all the time, right? When, we just need a field goal to tie the game to send it to overtime rather than we need a touchdown. It happens all the time that teams end up losing in that situation because they aren't going for it as hard. And I think that's
or
the
you're
case
not the
here.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, you know what?
But you know what? It kind of felt like we were in that position. That the point situation was different over this past weekend, but it kind of felt like we were looking down against that opponent, and we got caught with our pants down. And it really is a scenario where I think Freiburg has not the upper hand, not just because they're playing at home, but because they're playing for a victory and nothing else. They're going to be on the front foot, even if they're up 2-1, let's say. They're still going to play with their hair on fire, and that's not good for us.
Yeah, they have to because they know that if they give up a draw, they're essentially done. So everything's going to be thrown at us by Freiburg. It's within their mentality, their DNA as well. That team does not give up, and
Brian,
I'm definitely scared about this weekend.
Brian, would you rather be in Freiburg's position or Frankfurt's?
I'd rather chase. This presents to me the exact matchup at the match day 34 of the 15-16 season. Please tell me how that went. And please tell me who was involved, because we had an extra special episode just on that relegation survival. For those who are remembering, it was Eintracht Frankfurt away to Werder Bremen. And we gave up a late
like 94
winner to Werder Bremen, knowing that the draw, we're safe. Instead, Bremen sent us into 16th, and we had to go through Nuremberg, which, Chris, you have more than a few memories of that one.
Well,
so I'd rather be the chaser than the chasee.
My memory of that Bremen game, I was on a train to Munich, and some old German lady yelled at me for using profanity in English, and I apologized, and she said, no, it's okay to be mad, but do it in German. It made me smile, but all I really needed from the old lady was a freaking hug because I was so heartbroken by that. I mean, it turned out fine, and honestly, I feel like that loss, and I've mentioned this a million times, but I'll say it again. That loss was critical to our development as a club. And having to go through that relegation playoff brought us all the success that the last few years has grown into. Um, but what have we learned? If we're here now 9 years later, have we learned enough to not take match day 34 lightly? And you're a professional footballer, and we would expect all 34 weeks to be the same effort. They're not. We know this. Anyone who goes to work as a true professional knows you cash it in some days. Um, but when you're a professional footballer and it's the last league match day of the season and you have Champions League qualification on the line, there's no better way to become a club legend. Who are you going to be? Are you going to be the guy who goes through the motions because you want to move next summer, or you got a vacation scheduled so you don't want to, whatever the case is, focus on your task at hand and compete. If you come up short, that's fine. But if we have 70% possession and 5 shots on target again, I'm going to set my hair or my house on fire, one or the other. And I just don't know. Well, the funny thing is, let's just get into the match itself. Saturday, May 17, 9:30. Of course, all matches on match day 34 starting at the same time, 9:30 Eastern time here in the States, 15:30 in Central Europe. I love this. I love the match day 34 setup, all the matches going on. I won't see a single one. I won't see our match. I am going to be in Charlotte. This is my fault. I brought this on myself. I was at Disneyland Paris last July, and I got a text from a family member that said, "Hey, you want to go to the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow in Charlotte next year?" I'm like, yeah, sign me up. Buy the tickets. I'm in. It coincides with match day 34. I'm going to be on a golf course with a bunch of yuppies who like to be quiet, and all I want to do is watch my team. And I'm having some regrets about this one because I feel like I am a bad fan for saying I'm fully invested, I'm all in, do this podcast thing, and then I'm going to miss the most important match day in years. Like, it's not good, but I'd feel better with a win, and I'm going to be following along. John, what is the pathway to getting to a victory?
It's honestly a little bit take advantage of Freiburg needing the victory. This team is very good, like our team is very good at counterattacking, playing with some speed. Let Freiburg attack the game and take advantage of that. Now, you need to press hard and try and make sure that you win some balls and be able to move the ball forward. But I think because Freiburg needs it more, and while I think that almost puts them in a better position, it does create the possibility for them to slip up and for us to take advantage. And I think it's capitalizing on, their possible mistakes. I think we have a better quality squad than them, and so I think that creates the possibility for taking advantage of mistakes. But yeah.
Brian, what do you got?
This is for not all the marbles, but for the best looking marble bag and marbles we'll be playing with for quite some time. This is our kind of moment to put up or shut up where, like, Leipzig and Dortmund have been dominating, basically making with Bayern the top three be a top three, and we're just trying to fight out for fourth place. Then you saw Leverkusen do their thing. Well, you know what? The Bundesliga as a whole has been kind of mid this season, and this is finally a low enough points tally that we can make the Champions League and not be blowing everybody's doors off week in, week out, like a lot of the teams who typically do it are doing. For us to make that next step, we have to have that next step up in terms of money, and we sort of got a boost by winning the Europa League and making the round 16 for the Champions League. to make that next step, you got to get back in the Champions League again. And what we have to our asset is we're not Gladbach. We have a bigger fan base. We have better financial resources that can be triggered via the Champions League. And therefore, perhaps we can start dreaming of a salad bowl 2-3 years down the line when we get everything right all at the same time. And the way that the Eintracht shuts down Freiburg is just hitting them on the counterattack, because Freiburg's got a gun for us. You got to have all of the young, fast kids ready to pull the trigger at the very fastest transfer of the ball from Freiburg to Eintracht. You got to get it up on the wings as fast as humanly possible for the fastest counterattacks we can muster to get a goal that way. We don't have a Marmouche as an additional speedster up top, so we got to make do with what we got. Brown, Knauf, Ekitike, like those guys, perhaps even an Uzon in the middle, opening up pockets of space that his talent will allow. He's just not refined enough to do it on a regular match-up basis. That is what Eintracht needs to have done, and we have to have Robin Koch play possibly his best match of the season, along with
that whole back line.
And from there, Eintracht can get a 2-1-1, if not a 1-1 draw. That's my bit.
I love it. John, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Brian's point about, this Bundesliga season being pretty mid, that's the reason we're in the position that we are. And it's also the reason that Dortmund is in the position that they are. Dortmund has had an awful campaign this year. There's no two ways about it. They were staring down the barrel of not even making Europe. And now they have a possibility of getting Champions League on the last match day. We have been in a Champions League spot nearly the entire season. Then we sell our best player in January and drop a lot of points. We lost a huge lead on third. At one point, we even dropped down into fourth. But because a lot of the chasing teams have been so average, we've been able to maintain third place. And it's also why Freiburg, with a negative goal difference, is in fourth place right now. It's been a weird season for the Bundesliga, but it's one that we have to capitalize on. I agree. Attack Freiburg with speed. It's almost as if, what Dino put out there this past weekend against St. Pauli, which I think was the wrong lineup. I think putting out Bahoya, Knauf, and them up front was the wrong move against St. Pauli. I think that's the right move against Freiburg, because you need that counterattack. Someone like a Can Uzun, I think, would have been great against St. Pauli from the start. But like Brian said, he's not as refined, so sometimes the ball movement isn't quite there, but he offers a lot of skill. And I think that he could be of use in this game against Freiburg, but maybe better as a substitute. I don't see this game as one we're going to necessarily control, so I think just run at them, create some counterattacks, be clinical, and hope that the defense doesn't do what they've done a lot of this year and give up really, really atrocious goals.
Yeah. What's your prediction?
I'm going 2-2. I can't pick a win in this. I really don't.
That would do it.
I don't think we can pull. I don't. Maybe it's because this weekend is still so fresh in my memory, but I don't have a lot of confidence in the team right now, in the mentality necessarily. But again, a draw does it, so I'm hopeful.
Did I hear you say you will be unavailable to watch as well?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a family engagement that will not allow me to have a screen on, so I'll be able to watch
your family.
Huh?
We're your family. We're your family.
Yeah, no. So I might be able to watch, the first part of the first half, but I won't be able to watch any of the second half, which is probably the best. It's probably for the best.
It's hard, but also when it's out of your control. You and I are hockey guys, so we have these superstitions about like, it's good if I don't watch, or it's bad if I don't watch. Yep. And in a way, I think I'll be relieved because the stress levels will be off the charts.
Yeah.
But as far as my take on this one, I agree it's going to be tight and speed is important. Balls over the top. We've won them all year against good sides and bad sides using our speed with balls over the top. We've got some guys in the midfield and the back line that can play tremendous passes over the top. And we've got guys with speed that can, especially Ekitike, can now on the outside. Let them use those legs for good here. They're not going to be any good next week, so use them now while we can.
Yeah, it's it.
And I think the opportunities will be there. It's going to be a little easier for Freiburg because they just know they got to go guns blazing all day. I don't want to play from behind, but also I don't want to play with a lead like we did and just sit back either. So I'm pretty content if this stays level most of the way, even though it's going to be tough on everyone watching. I think that's the safest way for us to just remain balanced. We're not going to have to press too hard, but also, I don't think we'll sit back like we would with the lead either and then get caught twice like we did last weekend. As far as predictions, I think Kevin Trapp is going to have a vintage match. He has to. This defense overall this season has been good. They've had their stretches where they have not been good, but overall, not knowing what we were getting coming into the year with this group, they blended well. Artur Tiat has been, quietly having a hell of a good season.
Yeah.
And Kalk back there really solid, the linchpin of everything that's going on. And Tuta, again, we get on him because he's now the veteran guy back there, the most time on the back line for us, but we couldn't do it without him. So that back line's got to be steady. We need everyone to do their job. I'm with you. I think it's a draw because I think Freiburg has just as much to play for. They're going to come out just as hard. But we are a team that has constantly found a way to find a draw. It just, I'm pretty, I don't know any stat for this. We'll have to put Garrett on this one too. We have to have more draws the last 5 years than any team in Europe. It's just astonishing. I remember when we had 6 or 7 in a row.
Yeah, I do.
This group
was just ridiculous. I think it was 6 in a row.
Yeah. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to drive people nuts. I'm going to agree with you at 2-2, and I hope my phone is blowing up with excitement. But if it's 2-2, that means we qualify for Champions League.
It does. That it does.
I've been sitting on this can right here, and I think it's time to pop that can and take that sip.
That's the kiss of death right there.
God, that's so fucking tasty, man. That tastes like Champions League. God, I love Possmann. But here's the thing. I've been staring at this can waiting for this moment. And if I feel so passionately about this moment, I want the players to feel it. And it's their literal skin on the line. It's their job to do it. But it's our loyalty to them that drives the passion to these insane lengths. And I can't, for how much we've been put through the ringer as fans of this club over the years, and for all the meltdowns, and for how many times I've sat on this microphone and gotten all fired up and let's freaking go, only to shit the bed. Not this time. Not this time. Put the diva in the grave and pour concrete over her. Frankfurt is going to the Champions League.
Hell yeah. You know what? You were talking about how, there's that passion from the fans. And I really think that carries over to the players as he takes a sip and just pure
it's better
bliss.
Than sex. No, my wife's hear that. I didn't say that.
But you look at a player like Hugo Ekitike. He, when we were selling Randall Colomwani to PSG, we wanted to bring back Ekitike to Frankfurt. And at that time, he had no interest in it. He didn't, obviously the biggest part was his salary. He didn't want to over halve his salary. He was making $8 million there. We were offering less than $4 million. that winter, he comes here because he was completely frozen out. He has fully recognized now how important the relationship of the fans to this club is, and has been so just involved in celebrations, has been showing his love to the fans. Like, it's such an important part of this club, and it really does carry over to the players. And I hope that gives them inspiration to go out there this Saturday and just do the fucking job.
Do you remember the scene of Martin Hinteregger after the loss? That was Chelsea, right?
I was watching that at a bar in Williamsburg, with my friends. It was like our grad weekend, and no one else knew what the fuck was going on, and it was on in the background, and I'm just like, tears in my eyes, but I'm just seeing Hinteregger with the fans, and it's like, this guy. And
it doesn't matter where I am
club.
Or what I'm doing. When I think of that moment in this club's history, that's why I love this club.
Yeah.
Because I know that this weekend, no matter what happens, I'm going to cry. Mm-hmm. And I, as a, as tough as a dude as I think I am, I know that Saturday I'm going to be sitting on a golf course crying about a soccer game happening 4,000 miles away. And I love that because I care that much.
I had tears almost in my eyes when Christensen scored this weekend because I thought we were about to do it.
I had this can in my hand. Yeah. I was like, this is the moment.
I really thought, man, we're really about to do this for the first time ever. And, well, of course we didn't. But that's just... Oh.
If it doesn't work out, there's going to be a lot of disappointment. And there will be a lot of questions to be answered. And we're going to sit here and talk about them. But if it doesn't work out, we have to remember where we're coming from. And it's, a 126-year history of this club. It's not going to be defined by this year because we've seen final weekend meltdowns in the past. It's happened in my lifetime. It's happened in my fandom with this club. It's going to happen again sometime. I just hope it's not this weekend. And I really want to have a happy season recap next week. It would mean the world to get on here and just because also I kind of open up myself to criticism here if I pop this can and it was all for nothing. Man.
Right.
Kind of like when I was predicting back-to-back clean sheets. But look, I did that and it happened. So maybe we'll get lucky this time around. Because like in hockey, what we do as fans affects what happens on the pitch, right?
It is a pure and true science.
Science.
Absolutely, what we do affects what happens on the pitch. I will not.
John, where are people finding you? Where are people finding you on social media?
I have one more thing before we go, because today I decided to do a little bit of research here, and was looking into Frankfurt's records with certain commentators on the World feed, because we had Phil Bonney on as our commentator this weekend, and I think in the past, I think you have mentioned, or maybe someone else has, said the comment of, I feel like we always lose when Phil Bonney's our commentator.
Yes.
And so I was looking at it. So, we don't always lose when he is. He has been our... I went back to the 2018-19 season. Most of the games in that year...
Did you pull up streams and listen to who it is?
No. There's a commentator database. And unfortunately, it's pretty empty for that 18-19 season, but nearly complete from the... a couple games are missing from 1920, and then the rest are all there.
I see your employer really got a lot out of you today, didn't they?
Well, right now I'm unemployed, so,
well,
that helps.
Details.
But
this is good. Good
over that time, the commentator with the most games commentated for us is Phil Bonney with 44. Dan O'Hagan is right behind with 42. No one else has over 30. Phil Bonney's record as our commentator, 17 wins, 16 losses, 11 draws. no one else has commentated more wins or losses, but Dan O'Hagan has 16 draws. And the best winning percentage with anyone with any kind of statistically significant amount of games commentated is Gary Preston. So here's to hoping that either Dan O'Hagan or Gary Preston is our commentator this weekend. I have a feeling it'll probably be Phil Bonney, though. He seems to be the guy.
So you did all that research, and you can't tell me who's calling our match?
I don't know who's calling the match. I wanted to know who was calling the match, but it is not public yet.
What about Derek Ray? Where does Derek Ray fall?
Derek Ray will be Oh, and also Derek Ray is not a good one to have on here. We have a losing record with him. 6 wins, 7 losses, 4 draws. To be fair, he usually gets the bigger games. And this is also just including World Feed. If I included the games where he was commentating for ESPN, that record would be worse. But he will be in Köln commentating their game that day. So I do not believe he will be our commentator. So yeah, we'll see.
I appreciate your research. I don't know how I feel about it, though, because some of these guys have been guests on this show, and I appreciate them for that. But
yeah, right.
It kind of makes me cheer against hearing them. And Phil Bonney is fantastic at what he does. I love the way he calls a match usually. But yeah, that kind of puts things in a different perspective, too.
I don't know. Just thought it was
I wish I knew who was commentating now.
I know.
Tell us where you're at on
really...
social media, and I'm going to see if I can find it.
All right, yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, JohnBen33, and see the absolutely ridiculous metal concerts that I've been to recently. Or you can find me on Blue Sky at johnben.bsky.social and see me do stupid shit like this. I'm going to look into referees next.
All right. I thought I had it. Nope, that's the Frauen matchup.
Yeah, I don't think it's published yet, and
no.
So
well, it's a mystery, but it will be answered for us at 9:20 when that feed turns on. So you can find me at C in the D313 on Peloton and Discord, and at Chris N. Monroe on Instagram. You, of course, follow the show at Hey Eintracht Frankfurt on Instagram, Twitter and Blue Sky at hefpod, and facebook.com/hefpod as well. On all those pages, you will find a link to our link tree where you can see all the socials and find links to buy tickets to the Frankfurt matches here in the United States, and follow us so you can get updated on where we will be partaking in the summer tour. So for Brian in Kansas City, John in Virginia, I sure hope we're all talking next week after Eintracht is safely qualified for the 25-26 Champions League. Drink your apple wine. We're going, fellas. We are going. We'll talk to you next week, recap this week and the season that was. Till next time, cheers.
Hey, Eintracht Frankfurt,